This then is as far as we got in part 1. This render took about 6 hours, which is quite a long time on a fairly fast computer, and although it's okay, it's got a few issues like the noise, and also potentially the cube that we've got here is the normals on it are causing some problem for the TA rendering system. So what I'm going to do is take it back a step and try and work out a way of getting a similar quality render in much less time, but I am going to have to incorporate the use of a paint package, and the paint package I'm going to use is PaintShop Pro. Looks like that. Full license for PaintShop Pro 8 cost me £5, so it's not the most expensive piece of software to lay your hands on. Right, so to speed things up for development, I'm going to go into the render options. I'm going to reduce the rays per pixel. I'm leaving it on soft shadows and true ambience, and leave this maximum ray depth at 6 for now, but that's something I am considering reducing. Now this controls the light gathering method of true ambience. You see we've got scattering correction on and gamma correction off, that's right, okay. So the gathering method is starting at this point, say here, or it could be any point which the camera happens to be looking at. It then sets off in a direction and sees what light influence this part might be having on, and then it keeps going in this part. And the maximum ray depth is the number of times it investigates before it stops looking. So obviously it's looking to see some of the light sources outside, which if we go back and you refresh your memory, we were using the image-based lighting to provide the light source for this scene, and it's using direct lighting at the moment, but I'm going to switch it back to true ambience optimization because that will be more efficient, and it'll prevent it from really bogging down and slowing down. So if we go back to that, we'll only have the light source from the background at the moment. I'm going to turn the saturation right up. You can see in the preview that we're just using image-based lighting, but because the true ambience mode in its standard mode has got this cap on it that reduces the noise but also reduces its response to colour, that we'll see how that looks then. So okay, quite noisy at this level, and what I want to do is reintroduce the bright patch of sunlight falling here, because that was a sort of key part of the look of this scene. So I'm going to re-enable the sunlight, go into the sun moon, give it some soft shadows, so we've still got a bit of shadow softness. There's a bit of a tongue twister that, and we'll see how that looks now. So what I'm looking for is this to be fully white just here, so it looks really bright, and then the true ambience will pick up that, and it'll also pick it up on the model of the dragon. So I'll increase this setting until it gets it nice and bright there. So that looks pretty white to me, and it's falling on his foot there, and that's really burning that out, so that gives that intense lighting effect, and hopefully underside of the chin there will be showing a bit of light there. So that's good, but noisy. The other thing I wanted to deal with is the potential that the box is causing some problems, so I'm going to turn the rays per pixel up to 64 so I can get a bit of a better idea of what's happening in this area, and see that there's this odd bright patch there and this sort of pinch point that we saw on the other render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this box group, so I'm going to select both of these and edit, and I'm going to convert them into Bryce cubes. Now when I tried this before, this didn't work very well because the ceiling turned fully black, but I had a little experiment and found with some other primitives that it could be because this is perfectly horizontal, and that if we rotate this inner cube, if I can work out which one it is, so the dotted lines indicate that it's negative, round on its axis, that problem might go away. It did with this one, so I'm relieved to discover that. So we'll try re-rendering this with the Bryce primitives. You saw what the problem was there and how he alleviated it, and there's presumably some minor bug in the true ambience rendering method, and so at least it can be overcome. I'm going to render this just at 64 rays per pixel. We'll see how long that's saying, about 5 minutes. Well, I was going to allow myself a cap of about 10 minutes, so I'm going to take it up, because every time I take it up in rays per pixel, it'll improve the reduction of the noise. So that's saying 17 minutes. Now these edges here are looking quite red, and this is because inside this box there's going to be some into light gathering between the ceiling and the dragon. So you can look here and look at the dragon, then look back at the ceiling, look at the dragon, so the red's multiplying up. So if I go into render options and reduce the maximum ray depth, it'll see the dragon less times, so that the effect of the red will be reduced, but the render time will be reduced as well. So we've got 14 there. So as I said, I'm sort of limiting myself to 10. So we'll go back to 64, and if we can take this up to 6 again and have a look at the level of influence. So quite like the fact that it's making the inside of the box quite red, and that's saying about 9 minutes 23 now. It's a bit random on its choice. It's 7 minutes. So I'm going to settle at this and let this render out, and then save this one, and this is going to be our true ambience render. The next one I'm going to do is a direct light from image-based lighting. So HDRI direct light. This is true ambience, but also still gathering from the HDRI backdrop for these areas, and then find a way of combining the two that will hopefully allow me to reduce the noise and improve the sharpness in the areas of the image where it'll give that impression. So we'll see how that goes anyway. I'll stop the video for the time being. So then's my true ambience render with some direct light just from the sun that's slightly softened there. I'm going to save that. So we'll call that TA render. Not really typed that very well, have I? Alright, now I'm going to produce my image-based lighting, direct lighting render. So I'll go into the Skylab. I'm going to turn off, well, shadow softness for now on the main control. Disable the sunlight. Go into image-based lighting. Now, as I stated before, there's no quality setting that's high enough that's going to hide the shadow banding, because these walls are too plain. You'll always see bands. So instead, I'm going to use shadow softness in the image-based lighting, and I'm going to change the render options now so that we're not using the true ambience mode, but we will stick with the soft shadows, and we'll see what the render time is like for 64 rays per pixel. I could use regular mode for this since I'm not using any real premium effects, but the quality of the soft shadows is better if you can get to this sort of level in the rays per pixel with the premium effect one. Right, so that doesn't look too bad. It's saying 6-7 minutes, so it's under my 10-minute limit, but it's looking a bit dark at the back. So I could try switching the gamma correction on, which tends to brighten things up and lower the contrast, which is what I was looking for. And we'll get in a bit here, as you can see a bit there. There's some getting into the back edge there that's coming from the ground. Now, in this case, because I'm going to combine with the true ambience render, I'm not sure I want any light filling in there, because I'm going to get a better light modelling from the true ambience. So what I'll do is I'll pop ground plane back in, and that'll cut any light that's arriving from below, the direct light that's arriving from below the ground from the high dynamic range image here, and I'm going to increase the effect a bit so we get a bit of light at the back. So I'll try 350 on the effect, just increase the intensity. So we're getting a bit. Ideally I want to see the top of the dragon's head. This doesn't matter if this gets completely burned out, that was the effect I was aiming for. Let's try 500 then. Failing that, I'll have to start covering the sun up as I did before by putting an object in, but it looks like I'm just about going to see what's going on in here, and we'll get into the point where we're just about burning out this front claw, so that's going to match up with the other render. I'll try a little bit brighter, and then I'll call that it, and we'll see how that one renders out. Let's see, what's the time prediction? 8 minutes, so still under 10 minutes. Right, that looks about my limit. We're really getting burned out here, and the saturation's probably a bit strong. Just remember, as I was saying, that the true ambience mode will tend to suppress the colour from the background unless you're using boost light, but then you get a tremendous amount of bright speckly noise in your scene, or at least in this scene. It could work better for other environments. So I'm going to cut the saturation by 50%, and then it won't be quite so blue there. A bit of blue doesn't matter. Want a bit of colour coming from the sky, so I'm going to let that render out now and save that separately, and then we'll look at compositing and processing the two images in PaintShop Pro. So that totals up to, what's that now? The other one was about 7 minutes, this one's going to be about 8 minutes, so we'll say 15 minutes on the favourable side there. Okay, right, I'll just stop the video then, and I'll let this render out. So this then is my nice high contrast, gamma corrected, image-based lighting, direct lighting render, softened, but there's a little bit of noise in there, so I'd ideally like to get rid of the noise that's in this too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as my IBL render. There you go. And then I'm going to produce one last thing before we move on to processing the images. So what I want now, if I can find the dragon in here somewhere, here we go, and I go to my render options, regular, and I'm going to have an object mask. So that should give me just an object mask for the dragon, and I'll save that as mask. And now with these three components, we'll go into PaintShop Pro, and I'll begin with my TA render. Now this is the issue with noise everywhere in the image, so what I'm going to do is use my adjust, add remove noise, and we've got this edge preserving smooth. Now because I know all these have not got any texture, I'm just concerned about getting it as smooth as possible, so that's the maximum effect there. So that's given me a bit of a blurry image as far as the detail is concerned on this dragon, but we've still got a sharp outline, and it's softened the noise in that part of the render at the back there. And the next one is my image based lighting one, so if I can find that from on here somewhere, yeah, here we go. And like I said, this has got a bit of noise here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, so, and get rid of the top layer for the time being and work on the background layer. There's just two layers, images the same, one on top of the other, and I'm going to blur this one. So effects, no, it's just blur. We'll try blur to start with. Okay, that's softened that bit of noise out of there, and then I'll show you if I switch the other one on, you can see there's a sharp one and a blurred one. But I didn't want the dragon blurred, I want the detail to remain on that sharp, so I now load in my mask, and I go back to this one, select the copy, switch that on, and then I can use layers, new mask layer from image, and if I can find the one that's mask and go OK, what I should have now then is the masked sharp image and the blurred background image. So if I turn off that, you'll see that goes soft with the rest of the background, sharp because it's masked in. So that now gives me a sharp dragon on a slightly blurred HDRI backdrop, and now I'm bringing my true ambience render here to fill in this dark area. So I'm going to copy that, so Control C, and if I select the top group there and do Control L, that'll bring that in on the top. Well, I want it in behind the background, so if I promote the background to a layer and then drag this one to behind there, I've now got that as the background layer. So the next thing to do is then combine these layers. So I've got sliders that allow me to do this sort of thing, but obviously that's still masking the other one in. So what I'll do is I'll set this to soft light and set this one to soft light, and then I can bring this slider back to incorporate the true ambience into it. So I can select the levels for the different layers to get the effect I want. So this allows a bit of post-production control. It'd be nice if we could do this in Bryce, but while the information was still there suspended in the render, as it is before you save a high dynamic range image. It's at the point when you've just rendered the scene, there's a lot more information there is once you've saved the image, unless you save it in a very a very high format like high dynamic range image, and then you can do far more post work on it without any banding issues. So now I'm just using these sliders to set the background level to what I like, and then that I could consider my finished render. So file, if I save copy as, it'll combine it all down to one thing. So, and then it'll just ask me if I want to save any, warn me that it's not saving the layer information. So then I've got my final image, and really with the 5 minutes post-processing, you've got 15 minutes rendering time. I suppose in total it took, apart from setting the scenes up, well, if I include setting the scenes up, then I suppose it's taken half an hour to get to this point, whereas compared with just the render time of the other one, which was 5, nearly 6 hours. So it's a more efficient way of doing it, obviously, with post-processing. Then you've got more control, but you're not doing it all in Bryce. So swings and roundabouts. So that concludes the second part of this lighting tutorial. I hope that's been interesting and helpful for you, and will encourage you to experiment with the premium effects and image-based lighting.